On February 23, 2022, thieves broke into trucks carrying props and stole a Fabergé Easter egg from the set of the series The Crown. It was only a replica of the real Fabergé egg purchased by King George V in 1935. Nonetheless, the total loss from the theft amounted to £150,000 sterling. 2 years later, Scotland Yard announced that the thieves had still not been found, and the case was closed.
Oh my God!
How is the tradition of decorating eggs connected to the spring equinox? Why is this day so important in vastly different cultures and on different continents? Equinox. On this day, the sun rises exactly in the east and sets exactly in the west, spending precisely 12 hours above the horizon and 12 hours below it. The duration of day and night is equal all over the planet at this time. The first documented reverence for this day dates back to the first millennium BC, in the ancient state of the Medes. The Medes themselves referred to themselves as Aryans. It is here, in the territory of modern-day Iran, that the first mention of Nowruz appears, in the main book of Zoroastrianism, the Avesta. According to this sacred text, every spring, all the inhabitants of the earth were to celebrate the anniversary of the rebirth of life. How this holiday was celebrated has been preserved to this day in the traditions of vastly different peoples. Everywhere, bonfires were lit, and people jumped over them, thus cleansing themselves. At the same time, the tradition of painting eggs for the holiday emerged, which has survived in Iran to this day. However, the tradition of painting eggs dates back to much deeper antiquity. Archaeologist Brian Stewart discovered painted eggs in South Africa dating back 60,000 years. Even in such deep antiquity, eggs were painted in black, beige, yellow, orange, turquoise, and even bright red colors. And, of course, painted ostrich eggs, as well as those covered in gold and silver, are often found in the burial sites of ancient Sumerians and Egyptians, dating back to the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC. The official holiday of Nowruz, also known as Nowruz or Nowruz among different peoples, became established in the vast Achaemenid Empire. The main religion of the empire was Zoroastrianism, so bonfires were lit everywhere, and people would jump over them, a tradition that has persisted to this day, for example, among the Kurds. The tradition of ancient Jews coloring eggs is also associated with the Achaemenid Empire. In 605 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar II destroyed Jerusalem, and its inhabitants were captured and taken to Babylon. However, Babylon itself was also captured by the Achaemenid Empire. As described in the Old Testament, King Cyrus granted freedom to the captured Jews, allowing them to return and rebuild Jerusalem. But they brought with them the tradition of coloring eggs on the day of the equinox. It was these echoes of acquired customs that influenced the emergence of the tradition of coloring eggs at Easter by Christians. There is some confusion surrounding Easter, so let's take a moment to focus on it separately. Originally, this holiday was called Pesach, or in English Passover, was a celebration of the liberation of the Jews from Egyptian slavery. For 210 years, the Jews were slaves in Egypt. To free them, God commanded the slaughter of lambs, considered sacred animals by the Egyptians, to roast their meat over a fire, and to mark the doorposts with their blood. During the night, all the firstborns in the unmarked houses perished. This included both human and animal firstborns. God passed over the houses marked with blood. This is the literal translation of Pesach. Therefore, during Passover, it was customary to sacrifice a lamb and eat it. The Last Supper was precisely such a celebration. But what happened during and after the Last Supper changed the meaning of Easter for Christians. Jesus sacrificed himself for all people, symbolically taking the place of the Lamb. Returning to the calendar, both Passover and Easter are counted from the day of the spring equinox. As for the eggs, one medieval legend says that after the ascension of Jesus Christ, Mary Magdalene went to the Roman Emperor Tiberius. "The Emperor, Christ has risen from the dead," she told him. Tiberius, who was enjoying his meal at that moment, replied, "A man will rise no sooner than the eggshell turns red." At that very moment, the egg in the emperor's hands turned red. That the Old and New Testaments have two different Easters is not all. Practically in all countries, the word meaning Easter originated from the ancient Hebrew word Pesach, except in German and English. The ancient Germanic tribes, including the Angles and Saxons, worshipped the goddess Eostra during the spring equinox. She was the goddess of dawn. Eostra's companions were rabbits, symbols of fertility. It's now impossible to determine definitively whether Eostra's rabbits originally collected eggs, or if these two traditions merged later on. But it's clear that the Easter bunny emerged directly from the myth of Eostra. Opinions differ on which Slavic holidays were celebrated on the day of the spring equinox. Some ethnographers believe that on the day of the spring equinox, the celebration of Komoeditsa took place, which marks the awakening of the bear. This holiday was associated with Veles, a god capable of transforming into a bear. However, only one source describes this holiday. Others argue that it was Maslenitsa. This is supported by the account of the 17th century German traveler Adam Olearius, who wrote that Maslenitsa lasted for 2 weeks, thus ending on the spring equinox. In India, on the day of the spring equinox, they also burn effigies, similar to Maslenitsa in Russia. This happens at the Holi festival. During this time, they burn an effigy of the demoness Holika, who was an adversary of Vishnu. In Japan, the day of the equinox is celebrated as Higan. According to Japanese beliefs, the afterlife and the earthly world are separated by the Sanzu River. The river is composed of illusions, suffering, and sadness. During Higan, various rituals are performed to help the soul overcome the journey from the world of confusion and disorder to the world of enlightenment. And finally, let's briefly return to the Fabergé eggs. At the twilight of the Russian Empire, the imperial family commissioned 69 Fabergé eggs, but after the revolution, only 57 have survived to this day. Many members of the royal family who ordered or received them as gifts were executed, and their burials remained hidden until the 1990s.